Welcome everybody to the Clink and to Port Douglas, which is traditionally on Kukuyalanji land. Is that correct? Is that what I'm here to think about? And we think about and pay our respects to the elders of that tribe, past and present, as well as the elders who are here today and have come from other places and who live here now. We all need elders in our life. Apologies from the Mayor. She can't be here today, though she would have liked to. This event, Too Good to Be True, is hosted by Arts Nexus. Arts Nexus is growing creative people, communities and industries across North Queensland. And this is part of our creative conversations called Networking with Purpose. And the idea is that we hear and gather inspiration from the cultural leaders of our communities. So, I'm Avril Duck. I'm hosting this tonight, and this event is Too Good to Be True, and I'm here with Jack and Alteouise, who I will introduce in a moment, and they are here to inspire us. Before we get into that, though, thank you very much all for coming. It's a nice, small, gathered audience, so thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to the conversations. And if anybody's watching on a podcast, give them a little wave there. Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening in. Right. Without further ado, I've written some little intros for Jack and Alteouise. Not that one, but in fact, this one. All right, Jack has just turned, Jack Heywood, great Aussie kind of name, doesn't it? It encapsulates that. Just turned 80. And the treasure trove that is his store of experience of life, in that treasure trove, one of the most important touchstones is his love affair with Port Douglas. And we're going to hear all about that tonight. Port Douglas is a place he's returned to over and over again, and now it's the embrace of his reflective years. And this place here too seems a strange place for such a woman as Alteouise deVaughn to arrive at here and be part of enlivening this community with her fantastic history. She comes from a black American Baptist family with a proud tradition of college education, which means a lot to Alteouise, and her passion for music is something that we're going to hear a lot about tonight, and how she brings that. We can see it already tonight with her engagement with the children. So, without further ado, this is too good to be true, honestly. Alteouise and Jack.
Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to do is just situate us a bit. So, can you just tell us a bit, first Jack and then Alteouise, about what you're doing right now. What is it that you're up to? And then we're going to go back and look at how you got there. Thank you.
Well, I suppose it's filling in time between now and death in the nicest possible way. I've found a little dream place to live. I'm insanely comfortable, and I enjoy living in Port Douglas, particularly now it's a sophisticated place where there's no shortage of good coffee and cakes and that's you creatively wise. Oh look, no, I've sort of lost the passion. However, did write a show for the Ballyhooly train earlier this year. I write letters, notes, ideas are jotted down. So you don't sort of stop, but I'm not engaged. Nothing I do is a career move. Let's put it that way. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's too good to be true. I'm here in Port Douglas, And I'm the director of music here at the Clink Theatre, and we're presently in a production, Cinderella. We have some of our cast members here today. It's Cinderella for kids. And we're working on Full Monty for our big show this year. So that's a new Broadway type show for me to be teaching. So I'm teaching. I have private students, I have adults, I have teenagers. I'm teaching in Cairns, I'm teaching in Mariba, I'm teaching in Dambula, I'm teaching in Mossman, I'm teaching in Port Douglas. I just want to give as much as I can to these young people, and for when people come up to me and say, "Oh, I've always wanted to sing," I'm just like, "Yes, Mandy." Yes, you know, so that's what I'm doing.
Great, thank you. That's where we got it. Now, where did this all start? Where did it start? For you, Jack, this is a nice journey that we're going to go on. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how you got here as an agronomist?
Okay. I first came to Port Douglas in 1958. I'd got the Royal Agricultural Society scholarship to study subtropical pastures. I'd graduated from Ag College and was an agronomist at Grafton at the time. So I had this lovely trip. Remember, it's 58, so it was the mail. It took me all day to fly to Cairns from Brisbane. I think there were 5 stops on the way. TAA, the friendly way. But got to Cairns, did an interview with the ABC. The ABC announcer, whose name I can't remember, said, "We'll take you out for an excursion." Drove into Port Douglas, love at first sight. Mainly because as a child, I was locked into the romantic vision of the South Seas. Pirates were my all-time fave, and Robert Louis Stevenson, Louis Beck, all those writers that wrote about the South Seas, and I walked into the pages of a storybook when I walked into Port Douglas way back in 1958. And since then, I had a change in careers, went to NIDA. When I was touring Queensland as an actor with various shows, theatre in education, touring for the Queensland Theatre Company, hit Cairns, always came to Port Douglas and just checked it out. About 71, there was an opportunity up here to take over the lease of the Nautilus restaurant, which had been closed. The previous owners had abandoned it, and with my friend Bill Austin, we came to Nautilus, and he actually took over the lease because I had no intention of staying. At the time I was working in the scenery workshops of the Elizabethan Theatre Trust and loving it, so I didn't want to give up that job. But once I got back up here and we got stuck into the restaurant, I was here for the next 9 years. So that was all during the 70s. And I'm in my prime, I'm in my 30s, and we had a great time, particularly after I got out of the restaurant. I tried to murder Bill for some reason and went my way, and that's when I started working on the boats and in the pubs, and just simply became a dropout. It was my psilocybin years and all that new age thinking that went on. But I turned 40 and looked at myself and thought, oh my God, there's a world out there. I was a full hippie freak, and so I headed with my old black dog. I hitchhiked to Melbourne, and got a job in a pub actually. Rambling. Got a job in a pub, met up. Next thing I was working with the Melbourne Theatre Company. It was the years of Crawford, and I was back in showbiz. And then I did a visual arts course at Moorlambar to fill in time between gigs, and fell in love with the visual arts. And then I had a sort of a revelation that I wanted to be a dropout artist living in a shack in the tropics. And that became my guiding vision. And of course, next thing I knew, I'm up here, I'm living in a shack on the beach, and I've been doing my paintings. But when I came back after all this, coming and going, I discovered the Qld Theatre Company in Cairns, who employed me, and I ended up doing 5 shows with them professionally, and they produced a play that I'd written, and so I actually hadn't abandoned my showbiz career, and then I hit Port Douglas to find the Clink Theatre. Holy dooly, what about this, he says. It took me a couple of years to figure out what I could contribute using this space, and I came up with an idea that I would like to direct locally written plays that were anchored firmly in the community. So the first one I did was a play written in 54 by James Tucker, a convict, Jemmy Green in Australia. I anchored it in Port Douglas by giving my actors a pretty difficult job, in that I asked them to create prison personas. They were prisoners of the Clink, prison personas who were then putting on and playing the characters in this ancient play. And their prison personas were characters that they invented themselves. And so I had my cast writing their own experiences and performing it, and probably using the theatre in ways that it hadn't been used before. Entrances through here, we had intermission entertainment, and it took off. It was terrific, and I felt that I'd found the formula. And then I looked around, and the next obvious subject was Ellen Thompson, and then with Claire, I sort of said, what next? She suggested Christopher Skase. Next thing, Christopher Skase. Then there was the amalgamation play, and so all the productions were anchored firmly in the community, and I got a great joy out of that, as people were connecting with their community, and I was hoping building an identity. The idea of community theatre was playing strongly on me at the time, as that I had envisaged a company, but that's not too easy in Port Douglas with the turnover of the population. However, in one production, what I had hoped to achieve with community art actually happened. I had a company of 3 top performers. We did a play, Art. I designed it, and for me, it was the pinnacle of my experience with the Clink. A polished production, beautifully performed, and I'm awfully proud of it, and the actors involved. So, and then I began to wane. I've talked enough.
Absolutely not enough, but that's. I think we've arrived. Like we started, and then you went away from Port Douglas, and then you came back to Port Douglas, and then you went away, and you were an agronomist then, and then you were a NIDA. I mean, this is really a potted history. It's amazing. So we're going to get back to that, and you've arrived. The Clink. You've made the play that you want to make.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was speaking with you earlier, and I'm really interested to hear where that passion comes from and how it's taken you all around the world. And then you've arrived in Port Douglas. How?
It is the classic story of minister's daughter singing in the church, but not me, minister's daughter, my mother, minister's daughter, the daughter of Reverend John Paul Murphy, who pastored 5 churches in Augusta, Georgia, who was a graduate of Morehouse College and made sure that his 3 daughters were college educated. His 3 daughters, my mother was the oldest, his 3 daughters played piano. My mother was an organ major in college, then went to New York to Teachers College, met my father after he had been to the war, and was in college on a GI Bill. They were classmates with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Georgia. My mother is from Georgia, my father is from Alabama, from the South, wanting a better life for their children. Moved to California. I was conceived in Alabama and born in California, and you wish you all could be California girls. They all wish they could be California girls because we're fabulous. So if you've ever seen the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, and Tina Turner as a kid singing This Little Light of Mine in the choir so loud, that was me. I found my voice. I used to sing to my dolls. I used to sing, always, always sing, 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 sing. And one Sunday morning, something just jumped in me, and I decided I was gonna sing. And my mother afterwards said, "Why did you sing so loud?" I was drowning all the kids out. But then I found my voice, and then I went on to high school. And, you know, in those days, Jack talks about his journey in 1958. I was 1 year old. And in those days, you didn't have high school of performing arts. But I went to a high school that would have been a performing arts high school. Wonderful. Carolyn Shannon, my high school teacher, God bless her, was, we did shows. She was up in line to do Maria for the Sound of Music, and Julie Andrews got it over her. But she brought all of that passion and all, and I got that from her, from my mother, the passion of music. And I practiced it all the time, and that's what it takes. It takes practice. I sang in church constantly. I sang to my dolls. I sang everywhere. I sang, 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 sang. My mother would drag me to women's club meetings, and she was my accompanist. She'd play for me and sing here, sing there, sing there. And that's what it takes. And when I finished high school, my high school choir went to Europe to do a competition, a choir competition. Within that competition was a solo competition, and my teacher entered me in that competition, and I won. And I was already supposed to be going to Indiana School of Music. And the president of the Eastman School of Music, which is in Rochester, New York, you call them conservatoriums. We call them conservatories. So in America, this president of the school called my parents and said, she needs to come to our school. It's a smaller school, and she's a shy girl, and we will protect her, and we will watch over her. I was very shy. Really, and when I came back from college, my mother said, "Well, you finally learned to speak. Now you can't shut up." I was afraid to open my mouth, but I could always sing. And I used to think, you know, in those days we had Johnny Carson, and my parents would watch Johnny Carson, and whenever there was some Beverly Sills or Joan Sutherland, some famous opera singer, Luciano Pavarotti, or on TV, my parents would like bring me into their bedroom, and I got to watch it, you know. And I was thinking, when I become famous, I'm going to have to speak. I bet, you know, I'm so shy about speaking, and that was my biggest fear. Is like, what if someone asked me to say something? This is how a kid thinks, you know. Fast forward, went from there to the Juilliard School of Music, where I met Luciano Pavarotti when I was 20 years old, and did a master class that was televised, and that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. He loved my voice and gave me opportunities that I otherwise probably would not have had, and I have been very fortunate to have sung in just about all the major opera houses in the world, not just in the United States. Recently, the Opera Australia. So I met my husband 10 years ago, maybe more, in Italy. I was performing there, and I met this wonderful man who was working with the opera house, and we fell in love. And I was just at the point of, like, I need to retire. And he said, I want you to come and see where I'm from. Come to Australia. He brought me to Australia, and I fell in love with Australia. Then he brought me to Port Douglas, and we went riding around. And when we drove by this theater, I said, wow, a beautiful theater, small and just perfect for what I want to do. And I met Jack, and I was introduced to the Clink Theatre, and I started doing things here. And so, I don't know, this has been my journey, and I've been here for going on 7 years now. And then Michael Kerr took over the theater and asked me to be the musical director. And even though opera is my background, it's not my first love. Music is my first love, and I love all types of music. And I'm still learning. I married a man who has a collection of blues and rock and roll. He is a rock and roll musician, which I knew nothing about. When I was a girl,
You knew nothing.
I knew nothing about it because I sang opera. I sang classical music. So I was like a horse with blinders. And this is what I tell my students, and I tell my son, who is also a singer. You have to be like a horse with blinders, and you have to be focused on the prize. And you can't go left or right. So I stayed for 40 years of an opera career. I stayed like a horse with blinders. So I don't know much about life. I don't know much about anything else. I know opera. I know classical music. And then I meet a man who's a rock and roll musician. And of course, all the songs I ever heard on the radio that I just loved to sing along, I started to sing. And Michael Kerr has got me into musicals now.
I was going to say, and here you are, and you're a musical director, and you're doing Cinderella for kids.
Yeah.
Wow. That's not opera.
It's music.
It's music.
It's all music.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I just am a firm believer because coming up, my mother instilled in all of us, I'm number 4 out of 7 kids. And my mother instilled in us that you have to be the very best you can be. And being a black American means that you've got to work harder at your craft than the normal person because you've got something against you, which is the first thing that you see when you see me. It's the color of my skin, and it's undeniable.
Eyes, really?
It's just that's what you see, and that's just the way it is. It's all right. I'm comfortable with it. It's other people that might not be comfortable with it, but it's amazing how many people I meet who tell me I'm black. Like I don't see myself in the mirror, you know? Mm-hmm. But that is something that's a reality.
Yep.
And so you have to be focused. You have to be good. You have to.
And this was the passion about the college education and
so important. So important.
It's something you
but
could unavoidable.
Being a musician is something that is very important to me because of the education part. You know, you have singers. You have people who sing. They don't know anything about music. They don't know what key they sing in. They don't know how to read the music. They can only listen to someone else sing and imitate. And the whole program that I've started since I've been in far north Queensland is find your own voice.
Okay, so right there, I would
Yes.
like to start into this again with the next sort of layer of this is about your passion. Since you're talking on that
Yes.
subject.
Yes.
So can you go into that, go
Yes.
deeply into that? Your passion, where is it? Where does it sit? And how did it come to you? And how do you feel when you are there? What does it look like when you're there, sitting in the sweet spot of your passion?
First of all, when you are a musician, you must know how to read. That's the first thing. It's not good enough to have a beautiful voice, because if you're going to do it as a career, you have to make money at it. And so no one has time to spoon feed you all the notes and things. So if you're a working singer, if you're a working musician, you go for interviews, you go for jobs, you go for auditions, and they're going to hand you not lyric sheets, they're going to hand you music. And if you're going for a commercial, because you need to pay for your voice lessons. My son's voice lessons are $260 an hour in New York City. And if you're going to pay for your voice lessons and you need a job, instead of going flipping burgers at a joint, you go and you sing jingles for an audition. And that means that there are going to be 20 people lined up to sing this jingle. They're not going to spend a week on teaching you this jingle. They're going to hand you the music, and the person who could read the music is going to get the job. And that's just the way it is. You know, you come in to rehearsals and musicians over here, singers over there. Excuse me. I'm a musician. My instrument is my voice. I went to conservatorium too. And I've studied with the best teachers in the world. I have sung on more opera stages than most. And there's amount of respect that has to come with that. And there's a dollar attached to that. There's a dollar sign attached to that. Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you, this passion is the voice, and not just the voice, but...
Not just the voice. Singing of the voice, which is academic.
Yep.
Okay, there's God-given talents, and then you've got to work your craft. You have to be able to know what to do with your God-given talent. You have to be able to read the notes. You have to be able to sing the music, be able to interpret it. Or you have to have enough money to go to pay someone to tell you those things. And that's the way it was when I was coming up in New York. You went to your coach for this, you went to your Italian coach, you went to your drama coach, you went to this. I was on scholarship. I didn't have to pay individual people for this. And when I got to the point where I was out there working, it happened so fast. Jobs come. You have to be prepared, or else you can lose the plot. If you do a bad show, it gets into your head, and it's so difficult to recover from it. So you have to stay on top of it night after night after night. You cannot let it slack. You know what I'm saying?
This is a drive that you've got now. You're describing this kind of flame or this energy, and
there's so much in the music. You know, you do a song, you record it, and it's over. And then you go on tour, and everybody knows that song, and everybody expects you to sing that song the way they know that recording, and to live up to that expectation of that recording that you made 50 or 30, 20, 10, 5 years ago, to go on a tour and sing that song like you did with a microphone in a studio, night after night after night live. You better know what you're doing. You know, and if you're singing opera, you're singing on a stage without any amplification. You're carrying your voice over the orchestra. You're on stage, you have the orchestra pit, and then the audience is out here. You don't have a microphone. You've got to go over the orchestra. Your voice has got to go all the way out to the last row in that opera house. Yeah, and so when you're in that place where you're studying and you're getting in it, what happened to me was, I ran out of money. I couldn't afford to do all this stuff. And then I went, wait a minute. I'm educated. I know music. I can do this myself. And then I started applying myself and doing this. And I thought, if I can do this for me, I can surely do these for others.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing here?
That's what I'm doing. I'm teaching how to read the music because I have a plan. It's not a 1 year, 2 year plan to do these shows at the Clink. It's a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 year plan to teach these kids how to read music so that 5 years from now we can do a show, we can hand out the music and the kids can read it. And I don't have to spoon feed them every little note that is so draining and takes up so much time. And if there is a kid who is talented enough to leave Port Douglas and go to Sydney or the States or any other place, and they got that foundation in Port Douglas, good.
Yeah, all right. Right. Thank you, Alteouise. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Jack, you've got a different tack altogether, but nonetheless, the fire is there. We were listening to you earlier describe that once you got to the Clink, you had this feeling about writing plays for and by the local community, about the local community. I'd like to know, where did that come from? And I'd also like to know the fire that was theatre to you. Why? How did you get from being an agronomist to studying at NIDA, the National Institute of Dramatic Art, one of the most hallowed institutions of theatre in Australia? So, I will pass you the microphone.
Well, a very different experience to Alteouise. I can't get over how fortunate my life has been, particularly starting out in showbiz. I was interested in doing shows because I was with the Grafton Pelican Players, and we'd done shows like Dead on 9, Swamp Creatures, and this is what sold me, Death of a Salesman. However, I'm being an agronomist, I'm transferred to head office. I'll speed this up. I'm transferred to head office. I read that the new university at Kensington is having a residential drama course. Oh, this will be good. I can take this back to Grafton. I have the money in my pocket. I go out, ask where the office is. They send me to this place. I walk in, and the first thing they ask is, have you come for an audition? And I realised I was in the offices of the National Institute of Dramatic Art that I'd read about because I remembered it, Vaughn, the golfer. And here I was talking to the professor and a couple of tutors, and I just kept stum as they sort of said, oh, you will be expected, because I'm offering them money for the course. And no, you will have to audition. When can you audition? And I sort of said, oh, well, I've got to be back Grafton by Monday. Okay, we can fit you in Saturday. In a week's time. I just thought, oh, Jesus, what's happened? I actually then went and saw a vocational psychologist to see at a recommendation. So I had my bumps read, and they sort of said, oh, yes, you've got something there, give it a go. So, lo and behold, I was picked up by James Warren from Ag College. He drove me to the Royal Sydney Golf Club, where he's a member. We drank a few gin and tonics. I go off to the audition, and at the end of the audition, they say, thank you very much. And they sort of say, oh, well, listen, I really can't do this course. I can't afford it. Oh, well, we can see what we can do. And so I went off, lo and behold, back to Grafton, where I find out I've been transferred from my beloved Grafton and the Amber Surf Club to Yanko in the Murrumbidgee irrigation area. What? So when I got the letter saying I'd been accepted for NIDA and the Arts Council scholarship, I said, yep, I'm off. And so I was not driven by any passion for theatre or anything. And it's actually been a bit of a complex because I wasn't meant to be an actor. Or maybe I was, for these certain circumstances. But I can tell you now, I wasn't in it for the art, I was in it for the lifestyle. I love showbiz and all that went with it. But things did change. I did my apprenticeship years, and then got very sick with hepatitis. I did the round world thing, got very sick with hepatitis, near-death experience, and thinking it was all over, I dropped out. Intending to come to Port Douglas, but Noosa got in the way. Then So so I wasn't meant to be here. It was simply that being sent to the wrong office that I ended up with this career that I've had a lot of fun.
You fell into it accidentally, by the sounds of it, very accidental, theatrical, and yet when I hear you talk about writing plays and the work that you've done here, it isn't an accidental thing. So there's something that's developed. When you got into that, what was it that developed within you? And you're a visual artist as well. You're a painter. So why did this happen? What happened in you?
It does have a lot. Well, after the years in Port Douglas, I'd turned 40, matured, and then when I went back to Melbourne, it was for real this time. I did classes. I was mixing with pretty esteemed company, with the Melbourne Theatre Company, and I got pretty serious about it. Had an enormous amount of experience, but then when I did the visual arts course, which was only in 2000, that changed my thinking again. And I began to look on theatre much more holistically, so that it wasn't just the show, it was the event. And you may have noticed the shows that we've done here, we've usually tried to make it an event. The it was first of all the white paintings for art. We also had an art competition for Ellen Thompson. We had the visual artists do their impression of the story. So made it very much, each production was an event. And of course, with Too Good to Be True, we were given license to go well and truly over the top. And a joy working with Claire as she responds to this sort of showbiz, like the Rolls Royce we managed to have parked out in front of the theatre for the opening night of Too Good to Be True. But getting to why I do it, it probably is what I get out of it. And it's actually working with the people. When I used to do shows, it wasn't just the cast and the crew, but I'd be in my car going out searching props, meeting cane farmers, organising. We used to do launches, remember. I spoke to hundreds of people in putting on a production, particularly as there were local stories and we were gathering props. The authenticity of the props in Manoneera was stunning. To tell you the little adventures we had, we needed a wheelbarrow to cart the corpse out at the end. Do you think I could find a wheelbarrow without rubber tyres? No way. On to the Historical Society. Historical Society leads me to Cairns. Cairns leads me to this lovely Italian immigrant lady who has a shed out the back in Gordonvale. Take the trip down there, borrow a truck, and we find the dead right wheelbarrow that for the show. Cane farmer for Manoneera lent us the original flannel shirts he still had, the cane knives we gathered. So in getting the shows together, I'm meeting people, mingling with people, and when it comes to publicity, and that's the buzz I get. And I get the buzz out of when I have a cast and they get the idea. They discover the joy of performance, of discover the joy of using their imagination, and it can be a pretty powerful thing. So Sadie Jones, who was my Ellen Thompson, has gone on with her music. She wrote 2 songs for the show, and she's got a group now playing. At the present moment, she's on a steam train doing the blues train to Biwa. Her partner wrote his stuff for Jimmy Green in Australia, went on to do poetry slams. He was a finalist in the Queensland Poetry Slams. These are guys that got the idea of the show, and I got such a buzz out of that. The other thing, of course, is I've made so many good friends by working this way. But that comes from something I did learn in my entire career. I just like actors. I think they're a great tribe of people, imaginative, original, spirited. Yeah, I like actors. I love all my casts.
So the tribe of the imagination through the theatre and the transmission of ideas and I'm trying to narrow it down, I guess the location that you're kind of, I'm getting a sense of that you are resonating with place, and that this is coming through with all of the endeavours, kind of you're plugging all of yourself in, from the agronomist to the actor to the set designer to the painter, and then the writer comes in. How many plays have you written? Do you know?
Not too sure. Off of the Clink, I think it's 4, isn't it? and then there was Samaras for Jude. Look, and plus there's all those that are still in the bottom drawer. And in a paper bag.
So we do have Claire Tierney sitting with us in the audience, who's Jack's mentioned a number of times. And so, Claire, is there anything that you want to... Hang on.
Working with Jack is different because he doesn't just come with the play. He comes with the marketing idea. He comes with the concept of how to nurture the actors. He comes with the ability to create, as you said before, an event. I think Jack's the only person I've ever worked with, whereas at Interval we had somebody strapped to a cross and was being flogged. By you. Yeah.
That was the commentator. That's right.
The audience came out and they were just gobsmacked. What the heck is going on here? So, and I think he said it before, creating an event, because I'm an event manager as well as a producer, creating an event has always been my passion, and meeting Jack, I could see that from the start. Whenever we had an idea, it wasn't just the play, it was the whole event. And right down to the nitty-gritty of a cigarette holder that had to be I think in one of our plays he spent more money on a cigarette holder than any of the rest of the costumes, because it had to be that one because it was perfect for just the complete picture. The whole journey was great.
Thanks, Claire.
What I will add there, I think that sort of explains what I mean by a holistic approach to the theatre. Visual arts, music, it becomes a total thing, and bringing it all together. And as for my joy, I can remember once I designed a set for the Queensland Theatre Company where you do your drawings, then you make a scale model of the set. And I made a scale model of the set and passed it over to the theatre builders, and then come production week, when I walked into the theatre, there was my model in front of the stage, and I looked it up, and there it was there, in real life size. Look, just telling you about it, I get that feeling that I got then.
Okay.
And that's what I get when the production, when all those things come together, and there it is on stage as holy dooly. Now, and particularly when moments come together. And then the other joy is I suppose, what they call the accidents in painting, what the cast brings to it, what little accidents might occur on stage that can make a magic moment in the theatre. And funny enough, in the Clink, I'll tell you this story, one of the most magic moments in the theatre was during Annie. A total accident, Idris playing Roosevelt fell out of his wheelchair, stayed in character, calling back to the wheelchair, and the band, which we can't see, is vamping, obviously waiting for the cue, but people are helping Idris up, the band keeps vamping, and then they think that they must have missed their cue, so they start into the song, and the whole audience joined in. The sound was absolutely stunning, and a genuine spine-tingling theatrical moment, if you get what I mean. And this is one of the joys of, well, live theatre, community theatre, with, well, our theatre, I think we can safely call it.
Yeah. Brings me to, I guess, what is my final question, and then I would like to open it up to the audience if they have any questions. But my final question to both of you would be, because you have these burning passions within you and you've done the work and you know what it is, can you give us a sense, just a pitch to everybody, not a pitch, but like really tell us what is theatre or music or your passion to the world? Why should other people get this?
It's very simple. It's joy. It's bringing joy and receiving joy. When you give, it feels great. it's therapy, isn't it?
Well, I tell you what, you know you're living. And I think that's a very good lesson that theatre teaches, you know, how to live and you know you're living. Yep. The emotional ride, manifesting your imagination and working with people is, well, a joy.
Yeah. You know, I watched these kids today in rehearsal, our dress rehearsal for Cinderella. And I looked and I thought, there are some kids that are up there on that stage who have a passion. And it just, you can see it. And it's just like, wow, couldn't you see it? It makes you feel so good to see them up there having a wonderful time. But having a wonderful time, but being prepared, knowing your music, knowing your dialogue, having your costume right. It's the whole thing that creates that magical thing that we call theater, that we love. And these little ones, you can see it. You can see it from you know, when they have it, when that spark happens, and it's theater, it's magic.
Oh, I'm just thinking about loving theatre. She's a bitch.
Why do you say that?
Oh, the things that you've been through. Working with Black Jack Sumner at the Melbourne Theatre Company. Awful moments on stage. Oh.
Do tell.
Some of the things the critics say. And the donkey things that you end up doing. I've had so many embarrassing moments in theatre.
Please tell us about the cardboard blocks of stone.
The cardboard blocks of stone? What's
During a production.
Oh.
You had to exit before.
This Samson and Delilah opera.
Yes.
Okay, the big bacchanal at the end. I did a bit of study of dance. I'm in the chorus of dancers in this black and white opera, direct broadcast back in those days, the ABC, and I don't know what's going to happen. But we're given these instructions. The camera's right up on Samson. It pulls back, leaving a track, and we dancers have to throw ourselves to cover the track. So when the camera pulls back, however, we get to the first rehearsal or the first live, real rehearsal, and I'd never heard of polystyrene, so that when Samson pushes the temple and these great hurly big blocks of stone are coming straight at me, dropping carry, I just shrieked and threw myself to the floor and covered my head to wake up covered in a 3-foot diameter column painted to look like marble. I didn't know, but I got the fright of my life. Oh, listen. Direct to air, black and white television, did a dance number, and I collided with a rostrum, for the nation to see, including my sister, who let me know, stuff like that. And when the zip broke on the footballer in the club, and this great big red bulge appears right at my eye line as he's standing on a table telling everybody how marvellous he is, does a flex and out pops this great big red bulge. Could not stop the audience. We couldn't go on. And the costumes they've put me in over the years. Tie-dyed pyjamas in a production of King Lear.
All right, that's great. Happy accidents. Which are you similarly assailed by? No, totally prepared. What a great
Opening night of Phantom of the Opera in Cannes. One of the Phantom's fireworks was faulty and it sent an oil slick on the stage, and I came out and flew up in the air 6 months after having a hip replacement, and thought, oh my God, my hip, put my hand down, and when the dust settled and looked at my wrist. It was gone back the other way. And I quickly sat it and screamed, "Pull me off stage!" Then I realized I had a microphone on. So I started singing. Then I finally made it off stage, and the paramedic guy was so handsome. He gave me morphine, and I started flirting with him. So there you go.
Oh, joy. Yeah, that's...
No, but I don't have any stories like that.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
You're competent.
Audience, does any would have prompt any more stories or want to hear anything from Jack or Alteouise? Or comment?
Jack, what sort of plays were you? That's okay.
Or we need a question.
I won't need that.
We need a question.
What sort of plays were you doing at Melbourne? Were you doing modern plays, or were they? Because it's quite a while back. How long ago did they start doing plays of the day, of the time, the contemporary stuff?
Oh, Melbourne Theatre Company. Well, it's most famous for Summer of the 17th Doll. They've been at the forefront of encouraging Australian writers under the direction of John Summer. It used to be the Melbourne Repertory Theatre, I think it was called. I'm pretty sure. And Ray Lawler was their resident writer. Oh, crikey, when I was there, they were then inheriting the performers that had grown up in the Pram factory, were moving into the company. But I did the Scottish play, the club, a World War I play, another modern play by Poliakoff, Breaking the Silence, which was a West End popular winner. Crikey, hard to recall without looking at the biog, which I don't even know where that is.
That prompts me to ask you a question, Alteouise, about... I was thinking, yes, right. Can you tell us your first role that you kind of think, I made it, or what was the first big role that you got?
It was Orfeo and Euridice, which is the story. It's the composer is Gluck, and it's Orpheus and the Underworld, and I play the part of Orpheus. So it was a trouser role. I play the part of a man.
The man.
Yes, because that's what you do in opera. That's what you do in theater, especially when you're a mezzo-soprano. So mezzo is an Italian word for half. So I'm basically an alto with some high notes. And so they used to have castratis do these parts, and now they have females do the parts. And so I was with Opera Theater of St. Louis. I was 26 years old, and I landed this role as Orfeo, and Opera News covered it, and I got lots of publicity. I was in the Opera News magazines, and there was a very famous mezzo-soprano, another black soprano, American black soprano, by the name of Florence Quivar. And she was doing Orfeo in Trieste, Italy. And she was having difficulties and had to cancel. And so the two intendants were at a party. This is how things happen. And he said, oh, we've lost our Orfeo. Oh, we just had a wonderful Orfeo, and she's gotten all these reviews, Alteouise deVaughn. So I get a call from Trieste Opera, and asking me if I know, and of course I did it in English in America, come to Italy, do you know Orfeo in Italian? And I said, yes.
Did you know it? Did you know it?
No. So what I did was I studied what I could on the plane. I learned not memorized, but I learned to be able to sing everything in Italian on the plane, and I stayed ahead of the schedule. So every day I would look at the schedule and say, okay, tomorrow we do Act 1, Scene 5. And I would go home and I'd memorize that. I stayed ahead of the schedule and I made it. And they never knew that I really didn't know it in Italian.
That's an awesome story too. Getting away with stuff because you're educated and you're passionate and this is how you did it. Yeah. So actually you did know it anyway.
I knew it in English. I knew the notes, but I could read the Italian. You know, when Jack did Mano Nera, the Italian community in Queensland, it's pretty big, isn't it? Yeah. Busloads of people came. And my sister-in-law, I have 7 sister-in-laws from my husband on his side. And one of my sister-in-law, they all speak foreign languages and they're Italian and all. And so one sister-in-law was visiting from Brisbane. And I said, listen to, there's a group of ladies over there speaking Italian. Let's go over and speak to them. So we went over and started practicing our Italian. And they were like, well, how come you speak Italian? Oh, I'm an opera singer, da-da-da-da-da. And that led to a beautiful relationship with the ladies in Dimbula. And that's why I'm teaching in Dimbula, because I met those ladies at Mano Nera. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jack.
Well, that's exactly what I mean about getting into the community. The ripples can be incredible, taking people in. And one thing, getting back to this, is that it has been committed to the locals, and I've often had words about we're not doing it for the tourists at all. We're doing it for our community that may earn money from the tourists. But no, I've never seen theatre here at the Clink as a tourist attraction at all. This is for our town.
It's a benefit. Yeah. It's a benefit for the tourists when they come. They can come and they can see our shows, and I hear lots of feedback from the tourists, like, wow, but it is for the locals. I'm in agreement with you, Jack, there, that we do these shows for the local. And a couple of shows that I've done here at the Clink have been presented by the local people, for the locals. And people look for that. They want to see the locals. The lady in the checkout line at IGA, she says, oh, it was so good to see. Oh, they come through my line, and there they were up there on the stage. I didn't know they could do that. You know, and that is so rewarding, isn't it? When you have local people who come into the theater, who perform, who wouldn't have an experience being in community theater, and they come and they get hooked. And you see them every time coming back and auditioning and building on that. It's just a good feeling.
It is.
Too good to be true.
Well. That's the exit line.
Say so. That was a fantastic wrap up. Stick around, everybody. You can have a chance to chat to Alteouise and Jack when we've just made this a wrap. And thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Alteouise. Thank you, Jack. That was quite illuminating and exciting. Lots of kind of shivery moments. And that's what Arts Nexus is doing over in Port Douglas. We have a little base, a little pop-up shop in Cairns, but we're here because we're all across. And in Port Douglas, Claire is our feet on the ground, and Dale as well. So thank you for organising this tonight, Claire, and thank you, Dale, and Cassia. And if you want to know more about Arts Nexus, please have a look at the website. We are artsnexus.com.au, and we've got loads of programs to happen and rolling them out up here in Port Douglas as well. These are your cultural leaders, and there are many more in the community. Please spread the word and connect and dig in. Thank you. Thank you very much to the Clink Theatre for being this wonderful host and venue tonight.